Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Timalkov.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back on The Leaders Who Care. He's Marian on a mission to bring together some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world. And today we had the privilege and honor to bring someone who is very passionate about AI, automation, especially ethical AI, which is why we wanted to invite him here. And would like to welcome Tim Berce. Tim, thank you for joining us today, and welcome on The Leaders Who Care.
Thank you, Marian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tim, this is such a hot topic today, talking about AI, the future of AI, how dangerous it is or how good it is. And of course, there's always a question mark of people. AI is made from people for people. So the question is very important. What state of mind are the people who create this AI? And how caring would it be? And what are the dangers of this? So would love to hear your perspective about the subject, and of course, what you specialize in. How did you decide to be where you are?
Okay, sure. So I think this is an important topic to have in this day and age. I think we should be having and should be talking about AI way more than we currently do, even though, it's kind of on an uptick. Everybody's talking about tools like ChatGPT and such. And I think it's extremely important that we start having major debates, including inside government, about this specific technology. I think, there's potentially huge upside, something that can really benefit every single human being on the planet, while there are also some incredibly dangerous, potential outcomes that if we abuse this technology or use it in the wrong kind of way. So I think it's very important that we start discussing about what are some of the potential outcomes and how we can approach and build a wonderful world in the future. It's something that everyone's going to be empowered with AI, not something that we kind of we're terrified of or afraid of. And I think at this stage where we are right now, we are already seeing some potential for, things like reduced scope of work or, potential job losses. And I think this is the time where we need to start protecting people from, potentially losing jobs or being replaced by AI and not having another option to go to. Because some of these tools learn faster than humans can. And if your job is automated today, well, it takes quite a bit for you to pick up some skills to go work in another field. And potentially the AI could be faster than you when it comes to learning those skills. So I think it's extremely important that we start to talk about this and we find a solution for everyone that's going to get impacted. I think there are some very obvious career paths that are going to be impacted first. That
Which
are,
the most risk?
I think the biggest is probably customer support. I think that's one area that's going to get automated extremely quickly. There's already tools available where you can sort of teach the AI on the types of questions that you get and the types of answers that you give to those questions. And, they work surprisingly well, extremely well, actually, which means that it's kind of a little bit of a dangerous situation when it comes, back in, I think it was 2016, we saw this huge uptick of chatbots. Everybody was talking about how you should implement chatbots and have that going. And it didn't pan out then because the technology was wrong. We just didn't have the correct solutions. But now at this stage we do, and those chatbots are extremely good. And I feel like, everybody working in sort of customer care, is potentially first in line to be replaced by this technology. And I think it's important for us to find a way to do that without just excluding those people from society and help them, develop new skills or put them into different situations where they can handle more difficult tasks, more interesting tasks in general inside companies. That's one area, I think. And then we have a couple others that I feel like are going to go first. One of which is, I think translation is, I don't think we're quite there yet where the translations are perfect. Translators can be completely replaced, but we're getting kind of close. And there's companies that don't really need extremely high quality translations. And for those, I think the AI is going to be quite appealing. If we kind of look at the base rates of a translation agency, you might be looking at, 100, 120, 150 euros per 1,000 words. Whereas some of these tools like ChatGPT, on average, they can process about 1,000 words in 20 cents. So, the potential for great savings is there. We live in a capitalistic world, which means that companies are by nature usually more aligned towards chasing profits than protecting humans. And I think it's really important that we're kind of aware of that, and that we make sure that, people just don't get replaced without having another option to go to. That, and then, the third one, which I think is going to be a little bit more difficult, but not crazily overly difficult. I think we're going to start seeing some major changes here, as in writing. I think writing is going to be a very difficult skill to become proficient at, especially because some of these tools can already write very, very well. And provided if we, kind of teach this AI how to write better, we can get to a stage where the vast majority of the content that we produce is going to be written by AI. So I think those are kind of the first jobs, at least the ones that we see. I think there's many other industries that are going to be greatly impacted. But as far as the area of expertise that we kind of cover, those are the first three that come to mind.
And Tim, tell us more about your areas of expertise that you have as an organization, and how do you solve those problems or help companies?
So what we do is the entire team here is very focused on marketing. We've been working in this field for a long time. I've been a copywriter for years, so I was especially terrified because of this technology, because I see, and I get a lot of messages from young copywriters or students wanting to become copywriters, asking me the best way to start and to move things forward. And I'm a little bit hesitant to advise them to pursue this career path, because I do see the potential of a lot of this part. I'm not saying it's going to replace very senior copywriters at this stage. I don't think that's happening just yet. But if you're a junior or somebody just picking this up, I feel like it might be a little bit of a risky path to go down on. And that's why I, as a copywriter, it hits me in a very special way, because I love writing. I've been writing since I was a little kid in school, and then this turned this into a career path that I've enjoyed immensely. And it was very shocking to see how well some of these tools can write. ChatGPT in general, it's a great conversation tool. And once you take that tool and you teach it how to write even better, then things become extremely scary for potentially for junior copywriters or people wanting to become better writers. So I think that's an area where I started, and I feel like that those are some of the things that I think are going to get very impacted by this new tech. So we do a lot of marketing in general. We're very focused on automating marketing content, especially. So anything from anything that goes into this broad bucket of marketing content, which could be anything from landing pages, emails, ads, product descriptions, blogs, articles, LinkedIn posts, all of that stuff. I feel those are the areas where we have a lot of expertise, and we're leveraging now those expertise to build learning data sets and teaching AI on how to accomplish those same tasks. So that's what we kind of focus on mainly.
Very interesting, Tim. And just listening to you, that means a lot of this will become easier. But the question is how, if it's written by AI, how authentic this could be in terms of the organization, and also in terms of that connection with the customer. Right? How would AI impact the relationship with the clients?
That's a very important and very common question that I get when it comes to this. I think it can do a better job than a human copywriter. And the reason for this is what we've seen when we take a tool like GPT, so the language model, not ChatGPT specifically, but the language model ChatGPT is built upon. When we take that and when we feed it a lot of different data sets, which contain specific phrases and sentences and examples that were written by humans, it changes the tool. It writes different type of it writes content in a different way. And because right now, if for example, if you open up ChatGPT and you ask it to write an email or whatever, you can put that email into a AI detection tool, and the AI detection tool is going to be able to pick that up. It's going to say, no, this was AI generated. But once you go through this, through multiple rounds of tuning, you get to a stage where the content that it produces is so similar to human content that when we output that same content and put it into those same AI detection tool, we get a 99% human written content output, right? Result. So at this stage, if you train a model to write like a human does, it's able to replicate that incredibly well. That's what these tools are specifically really good at. And now what we're able to do is just produce very human content at great scale. So what does that mean in terms of marketing? We've been, the personalization is a buzzword used in marketing for, many years. But up till now, that hasn't really been possible at scale, unless you had people that were specifically writing every single email and calling customers and all of that, which, works, but is also very resource intensive. But now we're able to, teach an AI on how to communicate, how to write, how to build and leverage the data that we already have and turn that into extremely personalized and targeted messages. So I think that's where we're kind of at. We can completely replicate and create something that's indistinguishable from what a human would write, but we can do it at such a scale that we can personalize things even more than we can right now. So I think AI is going to be overall better at this type of things than humans are, especially because, companies were usually very limited in terms of the resources that we have for things like that. One of the common areas that we see here is local in Europe. A lot of companies will translate their content for multiple different markets, which is great, right? But the funny thing about that is they call this process localization. So they say, we'll localize the content for Spain or for France or for Germany or whatever. But when you actually look at the process that they have, they simply just translate that content and push it to a different market. But that, that could potentially raise some issues. Like if you talk a bit about, maybe, a specific food or a specific sport or something that's really relevant in one country, that might not be relevant to another country. And if you're just translating that, you're not essentially localizing it. You're just translating the text. But with these tools, what we're able to do is also is not just translate the content, but also localize it to make it more relevant towards the target segment or a target country or every single human being if we have enough data points on them. So the world we're moving towards is probably going to look like, yes, some percentage, probably big percentage of companies are going to be using default tools, untrained, untuned tools like Copy AI and Jasper and ChatGPT and all of these. That's going to produce. They're going to be able to produce a lot of marketing content, but that marketing content is going to feel very AI-ish. So it's going to sound like it was written by a machine. But then I think the other part is, and I think this is going to become more and more accessible as we go through time. Companies are going to tune these models. That what I really believe is going to happen is companies are going to develop their own AI centers inside each company with the only goal of training models to produce outcomes that they want, right, inside the company, solve problems for that company specifically. And I think the big companies are going to start first. They have more resources, more data, all of that. But those companies are going to be able to produce a ton of content, way more than they produce right now, at a higher level and more personalized than they do right now. So I think part of the game is going to change a little bit. Some companies are going to produce, a lot of bad content, but I think overall and over time, we're going to be able to produce much better content, way better with way better targeting and just really personalized towards each specific individual.
And I understand that this is targeted towards the larger companies. What about how this tool can be helpful for the smaller ones that perhaps do not have as much content as what the larger ones would have? Does it mean that they're disadvantaged, and that just means that they don't have a chance against the larger ones just because they have more content?
I think there's two ways to look at that problem. And one is I'm really worried about the other one. I'll talk about the first one first, but the other one I'm really worried about. The first part is, yes, these, probably smaller companies are first going to use these tools for ideation, finding, good ideas for the topics they should write about, but then they're going to go and actually write the entire content piece on whatever they find out, whatever, a tool like ChatGPT recommends. I think that's fine. I think that's already happening everywhere. I think, with the amount of users that people have, that ChatGPT has right now is just incredible, growing really, really rapidly. And I feel like most people use this tool to, get more ideas on stuff that they should talk about. But then, because these tools can learn and you can teach them to write better, what I feel like is going to happen in smaller companies that don't have big enough data sets, I think what they're going to do is they're going to scrape those data sets from competitors, for example, from larger competitors or individuals even. And this is where we're kind of getting into a very, kind of strange, possibly, could be, that depends on how some of those lawsuits go with copyright and everything. They could potentially infringe on copyright. And I think what can happen, if we take a simple example here, let's say you want to post more often on LinkedIn. You're a business professional. You want to, post more content on LinkedIn, which, perfectly valid strategy. And what you do is you look up a bunch of really successful people on LinkedIn, and you potentially could be just one person, which would be, in my opinion, extremely wrong. But you could potentially take a look at 2, 3, 4 influencers, scrape all of their posts and teach the AI to write posts like that. And then you're able to produce a lot of LinkedIn posts at scale. But then, we start getting into the questions of copyright and whether or not, is it ethical to fine tune a model based on maybe a single person? Right? If you take a single individual that's extremely successful, produces a lot of content, and you train this tool to write exactly like they do, and then you use it for yourself, I think we start to hit some ethical boundaries that we should definitely talk about, and something that I personally think should be regulated. And that's where I think, small businesses are still going to have opportunities. They just might find different solutions to those opportunities. And maybe some of those solutions, I don't think are not all of them are ethical, because training these models takes a lot of data, big chunks of data. And if you don't have that data, well, you need to find it somewhere. And I think most of the companies already kind of look at their competitors, try and study what they're doing. And if they start to tune those models on their data, then I think, yes, that it does give them an advantage where they're able to produce more content much more rapidly at scale and all of that. I think there's a big legal question here, whether or not they should be allowed to do that.
Well, that is something that we shall see how it's coming along. But from your experience, and just looking at how far or how advanced we are with AI, and how far are we from the status that you mentioned, singularity, and what does it actually mean?
Okay, so singularity it's called after the black hole, and for a reason, because we don't know what happens after we reach that point. But that is the point where the AI becomes so advanced, it's way more intelligent than a human person, and just is able to constantly evolve and learn on its own. We essentially create a being, an AI being that thinks and works and does things for its own benefit. And that it's called the singularity because, just like with a black hole, we don't know what's inside a black hole. And we're not able, because this is such a vast super intelligence, we're not able to tell what actually happens. So it becomes probably impossible to predict the future of what happens as soon as we reach that event. I don't think we're super close to that event, though. I think there's still time to get there. I hear wild predictions from, in terms of few years away to decades away. I'm kind of more leaning towards the decades side of the predictions. I don't think we're super close. I think there's many challenges to focus on first, but I think we are on the path there. And I think right now, with all of these tools being so new and a lot of people focusing on prompt engineering, writing specific instructions for ChatGPT to get great results, I think we're slowly going to kind of move away from that and go into more building data sets that teach AI how to accomplish stuff. But if we imagine that world where the vast majority of companies are teaching AI to solve problems, then we're starting to get into the area where AI is starting to master all different kind of stuff, all solve different kinds of problems. And if there is a potential for somebody to link all of that data together, I think that's where we start, hitting into, potential start of an AGI.
Well, is that inevitable, do you think, that we'll reach that singularity point, or do you think we could prevent it?
No, I think we're on the path. I think the genie is out of the bottle. I don't think we'll be able to put it back. I think that might be, this is more of a philosophical debate now, but that might be the purpose of humanity, to create this super intelligence. But I think this is the path we're riding on right now, and I don't see a way for us to get off of it.
I am, because in the point of what's the point of humanity, I think when we hear, it's not just to serve ourselves. For me personally, is this much greater thing, like serving God and being a blessing to humanity, not creating necessarily just the AI who takes over the world, right? So
100%.
Does it mean that's the end of humanity if the AI controls humans?
I think it could. It's a scary answer. It potentially could. And that's why I think it's so important that we start having these debates right now. We talk about AI and find ways to try and avoid that, right? I think it's an extremely difficult challenge, right? If you imagine something being millions and millions of times smarter than you, well, how do you really affect the way that it thinks and the way that it behaves and what it wants, right? So I think we have many challenges in front of us. I don't think we're super close to something like that. I think that's still long, years and decades probably down the line before we reach that point, possibly longer if we manage to reach it at all. I think that's not a very pressing concern in my mind, where everything's going to move so quickly that might happen in the next few years. I don't think that we're there. It just, in the back of my mind, I do think that there's already other issues that we should focus on in terms of AI, and I think job losses is one of those. That's the first one, and then the other one is, as we progress down this route, and as more and more jobs become automated and we kind of free up the amount of time that we have, right? So maybe a job that would take 8 hours now might take an hour or two later on. Well, I think we need to develop systems to still have purpose in our lives. I think jobs give a lot of purpose to a lot of people. And I think we're going to have to learn how to do things that make us very happy and fulfill us without necessarily spending 8 hours a day inside an office. I think that's kind of the world we're moving towards. That's why I think a lot of people are talking about the four-day work week, and instead of working 8 hours, 6-hour workday and all of that. And I think that those are great first steps. I think we should be talking more about that. Plus, also talking about what makes us happy as humans, as society. Where is the role of a human in a post-AI world, post-AGI world? Right? How do we become happy? And there was a great debate. A great point raised by Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, who developed ChatGPT and GPT and all of that. And he said, there's kind of two ways to think about AI. There's inside their company, they usually, when it comes to having kids, they have two sides. One side is, I'm not going to have kids because there's, literally no point. They're not going to have jobs when they grow up. They're not going to be able to live in that world and have purpose. And I think that's very sad. I think I agree with Sam that that's probably not the way that we should think about this technology. But the other one is, I think, is really inspiring, really great. The other group, which is, no, I'm going to have kids because that's going to be the main purpose of my life, is to build relationships with people, raise kids, and I think that's something that's not going to go away. I think humans are still extremely sociable beings. That's why we bond together in societies, and I think that's probably going to be one of the major things that we do in our lives, is just socialize with people and make connections. And I think that's extremely beautiful. I think that's something that we should definitely focus on more and talk about that as we get more and more spare time.
Absolutely, Tim. And to be honest, it feels like we've been against our nature in the last few years, with COVID on one end, with more technologies manipulating, or let's say grabbing our attention, to videos, YouTube, and you name it, platforms, which takes away the connection time with people around you, and including your family. So often they suffer most when you are addicted or just focused on something. You don't really have that connection. So I think we're in a way going against our nature with having those tools that are able to, because the biggest focus on those technologies to attention is currency, is to get more of your attention. So then we have more free time, but then where that attention is going to go? Would it go towards the family, which is more free time coming along? Would it go towards, again, someone else trying to capture it through those technologies? So what do you think is, when it comes down to the happy and caring really way and loving way, what is your take on what we should do with the free time, and how should we use technologies for our to improve our well-being versus grabbing our attention away from our family?
So I think that in the short term and short to medium kind of term, we're going to see a lot of more entertaining content being created with AI, which means that it's going to be even more difficult to take our eyes off of screens. I think that's going to be one of the major impacts. That's why I really love seeing people really push a minimalistic lifestyle, avoiding technology, having a minimalistic phone where you don't have any apps and notifications and all of that. I think that's one debate that we're not really having, how addicted we are towards just fast bursts of dopamine, because we're so addicted to essentially technology and spending our times consuming content. I think in general, consuming content is one of the biggest addictions on the planet right now. I feel like we should definitely be speaking more about how to replace consuming content with a hobby, or with a new relationship, or meeting new people. And I feel like as we have these conversations, as we get people to focus more on this, and I think there are companies, I think, that already focus on this and try to kind of pull your attention away from the screen, and I'd love to see more of them. And I do think that there's a big struggle ahead to teach people how to enjoy themselves without spending time on the screen. And I think that's a challenge. That's a big challenge, because it's so easy just to open up your phone and watch TikToks or YouTube Shorts or whatever, or Instagram, or all of the social media content that we consume on a daily basis. And I think we are going to have to find ways to kind of try and avoid that. It's kind of like the addiction to sugar in general. Yes, I think most people would agree right now that sugar is not good, and yet still we consume it in huge quantities. But that doesn't mean that everybody does that. That doesn't mean that everybody keeps consuming sugar, and then there's still people trying to pull us away from that, educate people on why that's important. And I hope to see more of that in the future, because I think it's going to get harder as more and more content is produced, as we have more and more platforms generating, incredibly addictive, interesting content. So I do see a huge rise in entertainment. Like you said, attention is currency. I think that's absolutely true. And the funny thing is the introduction of the transformer architecture, which is the specific deep learning model that has allowed us to build ChatGPT. The research paper that released that, was released by Google engineers, is called "Attention is All You Need," which is a little bit of a meme. Attention is an actual deep learning word that they use to describe a certain system. But it's funny because even there, I think everything comes down to attention. And I do think that as we progress through the world, it's going to be harder and harder to keep focus on the things that really matter. But I do think we need to find ways to find better entertainment sources. And I think, building relationships, meeting people, having hobbies. I think we're not talking enough about hobbies and the things that we should be doing in our spare time, not just glued to our screen, just swiping.
Do you think there's a correlation between the increased screen time and entertainment, online entertainment, and anxiety or depression?
I do think so. I think it makes sense as well. I think it's linked to all sorts of issues, and I think the lack of sleep that we have in society is a big component of that. You come home after work, you're exhausted, you have kids or whatnot. At the end, before bed, you want to spend some time for yourself instead of picking up a book and reading or doing something productive. But even books, if it's too late, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be sleeping. People glue themselves to their phone, keep swiping until 1, 2, 3 a.m. and then they go to bed and wake up at 6 or 7. So I think the lack of sleep is a big component of this new world of entertainment that we're living in, and I think that is going to get worse. It's not going to get better in the short term because more content is going to get produced, and we're going to have to develop new methods to try and avoid that. And I'd love to see some sort of government action on this. I know it's easy to say that we need more regulation. It's extremely hard to come up with good regulation to do that. But I do think that if we were to find a good system and a good way to regulate that, I think that'd be incredibly helpful for humanity in general.
The question is, how can we thrive in that reality or what's coming? How can we really educate our children, our society, our friends, our community? Because it's difficult for adults to stay away from screens, never mind to ask to demand it from children when actually you can't do it or you don't do it. So here is, to be happier, to really take care of more for each other. How can we thrive in the new reality from what you see? What are the ideas, suggestions that you might put forward?
So I think as we move to, I have some personal experience when it comes to this. I've spent the last year, I spent about 6 months. I've been working 6 hours a week. So I've tried to minimize the amount of work that I did last year to a bare minimum, just 6 hours a week. And at the beginning, because before that, I am prone to workaholism. So I work way too much. So this was a big change for me. And what I've noticed is that the first few days were great. Felt like relaxed completely. Did nothing, just watched a series and all of that. But after that comes this stage of boredom. And you're incredibly bored because you're not. I didn't want to consume so much entertainment. I wanted to take time off just to relax my mind and all of that. And I think that's the part that we need to focus on most, because boredom is actually incredibly healthy if you use it to empower yourselves to develop more interesting and more healthy hobbies in your life. And I think it's going to be difficult for most people because, when you're bored, the easiest thing to do is pick up your phone and start watching series. But if we focus on especially teaching people why boredom is important, because that is the world where we're kind of moving towards as we work less and less, as AI replaces more parts of our job, as the workday becomes shorter and shorter, we're going to have more spare time. I think it's extremely difficult at this stage for example, a parent that's working and then, picks up kids from school and makes lunch and all of that stuff. It's extremely difficult for them to have any sort of spare time or time to spend with their partners and whatnot. And I think that's why it's extremely difficult to have this debate right now and tell them, hey, you shouldn't be spending 30 or 1 hour before bed. You shouldn't be spending that time on your phone. But as we get more time, as we work less and less, instead of, if right now people work 8 hours on average, we start moving towards maybe a 4-hour average or a 3-hour average. Well, then that gives you 4 or 5 hours to accomplish more in the day. You could get ahead of some tasks that you need to do. You'd have more time to relax, more time to develop healthy hobbies. And those hobbies, I think people should include art, crafts. They should include time with spending time with other people. They should include travel. They should include, sport and exercise. And as we, focus more on that, I think as we have more spare time, because right now, in this world, it's difficult to have free time. But as we get, as AI kind of replaces some parts of our jobs, if our governments also make sure that those people are safe, and there's projects like ideas like UBI and things like that might enable people to do that. In that world, I think I think people will learn that boredom is an actual thing. It can actually exist in this busy world. And the only thing that I think we should really focus on is helping people realize that they can channel that boredom into something interesting, productive, something healthy for them, either building new relationships or developing new interesting hobbies to do, instead of just consuming more content. I think that's the battle in front of us.
I love the fact that we will have more free time, and I wish that more people can focus on really, probably for me personally, what I would love to have more free time is to focus more on the Word of God, so I can learn what His principles were, more with our friends, more with the family. So there's plenty to do. So I love the fact that there will be more freedom. But also with that, there's responsibilities, as you say, because there's so many temptations, Tim. And if you just go to entertainment again, then that's... how much can you entertain yourself? It's good to be bored, as you said. It's good to, there's a moment where even entertainment becomes no longer, it's too much. Like, you could over-entertain yourself on that front. So I think that's really the positive aspect, that they will have more free time. And we probably earn similar amount of money because of automation, hopefully. And
hopefully. I think that's a big challenge right there. Because if we start losing jobs en masse, right, getting replaced by AI, working considerably less hours, and then we also lose our income source, then I think that becomes a big, big, big problem. And that's something that I'm hoping governments step up and develop systems to protect people from that. If that happens, and I'm hopeful that it does, and I think that is the way that we should move forward, then I think we're in for a bright future when it comes to adopting AI for into humanity in general. But I think that's kind of the main challenge ahead of us.
To wrap up the conversation, really helpful and insightful from your end. What is your wish for more caring future, for more brighter future?
So I would drink the AI Kool-Aid completely and say that, a complete utopia where nobody has to work if they don't want to, but they can build interesting things if they want to, and focus on, a lot of hobbies. I think, I think most people don't have enough hobbies in their lives. I think they should have definitely more interesting stuff that they want to focus on, not just for the sake of creating, art, for example, like artwork. Your main goal shouldn't be to create artwork that gets seen by millions and millions of people. I think it should be to create art for the pure love and joy of it. And I'm hoping that we're moving into that direction. And that's my wish for the world. More hobbies, more interesting things that we do, and better connections and just better relationships with everyone else, because we're going to have more time to spend with other people.
Well, thank you for that, Tim. And of course, more boredom, which will be the prerequisite probably to get what you said. So thank you for giving this perspective, Tim. It's been really helpful. And we wish you blessings to your team and your scale up. and of course, likewise, more healthy relationships, more free time that you use for your hobbies.
Thank you so much, Marian. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise.